Welcome to this Coimbra Group open session on the European Universities Alliances. My name is Ludovic Tilly. I'm the chair of the Coimbra Group Executive Board, and I will be moderating this webinar. I would like to welcome you all to this first Coimbra Group webinar. I would like to mention that we received more than 600 registrations for only 500 seats. So we are very happy to welcome you here for this first Coimbra Group webinar. I should maybe mention that the audience can make use of the chat room that is on the dashboard. You can ask questions on this chat room, and they will be raised by myself during the question and answers to the speakers. I would like to add that the webinar is recorded and will be available on the Coimbra Group YouTube channel by the end of the week. I would like also to mention that this event was initially planned to be held physically in Montpellier today, exactly at the same time, during the Coimbra Group annual conference on the occasion of the 800th anniversary of Montpellier Universities. But as you know, unfortunately, the COVID-19 outbreak forced us to cancel the physical meetings and to replace them by a series of virtual events, including this one. So thank you again for joining us to this event. This is the first Coimbra Group webinar on European Universities Initiative. As you may know, since the very start in 2018, Coimbra Group has been involved in the co-design process with the European Commission and has made the strong political choice to provide support to all Coimbra Group universities during the first and the second calls of the pilot phase. This support will, of course, continue during the next Erasmus Plus program and is already manifold. Coimbra Group is associated partner to alliances on knowledge sharing and dissemination. We have now a recurring section in the Coimbra Group newsletter to which you are all kindly invited to register. It's open to anybody. And we are going to organize series of open sessions on alliances. Today's event is the first one of a series where Coimbra Groups aims at playing the role of a European platform to bring and exchange together the experiences and learning of Coimbra Group member universities involved in developing alliances. This webinar is open to everyone interested in the rolling out of the European Universities Initiative and the progress it is expected to make towards the achievements of the European higher education area. Today's program has been built to foster reflections and discussions, allowing to go deeper into the different alliances, processes of construction, and their strategic approaches, while discussing the various difficulties that universities are facing throughout this process, reflecting on the innovating tools and approaches, and providing inputs into the work of the European institutions and member states in this area. But just before that, I would like to add a few words on what is the Coimbra Group to those who do not know. Founded in 1985, the Coimbra Group is an association of 40 long-established European comprehensive multidisciplinary universities of high international standard that are committed to creating special academic and cultural ties in order to promote internationalization, academic collaboration, excellence in learning and research, and service to society. It is also the purpose of the group to participate to the co-design of European education and research policies, and you can find, of course, more information on the Coimbra Group on its website. And last but not least, all current developments have been impacted, of course, and will continue, unfortunately, to be impacted for some time by the COVID-19 crisis. Since the very first day of this crisis, the Coimbra Group has started to reflect on how we could transform this unprecedented situation into an opportunity for our network, as we have always done in the past, for sharing good practices in managing such an extraordinary crisis. This led to the first Coimbra Group briefing paper on higher education in late March, and this reflection was immediately extended through a comprehensive online questionnaire addressing all aspects of academic missions sent to Coimbra Group universities in early April. The responses for more than 33 Coimbra Group universities have been collected within a month, which was really quite a challenge, and have been analyzed and published less than 2 weeks ago on the 29th of May in a second Coimbra Group report on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education and research. And of course, this report is available on our website. And as you can easily imagine, today's speakers will surely include in their reflections some elements about the impact of this unprecedented crisis on the development of their alliance activities and strategies. After these first welcoming words, it is now time to start our program. And I would like to welcome our first introductory speaker, who is Sofia Eriksson, who will join us now. Sofia Eriksson is Director for Youth Education and Erasmus Plus Program at the DG EAC, at the Commission. And Sofia, first of all, thank you very much for being with us. And your speech is on the latest developments of the European Universities Initiative. And as you can easily imagine, we are all eager to hear what are these latest developments. Sofia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And dear Ludovic and dear Coimbra Group members and all the participants, I think there are a number of participants at this webinar, several hundreds if I understand. It's always it's a pleasure for me to always connect with Coimbra Group and its members to discuss the future together, and especially now when we will focus on the next steps of the European Universities Initiative. I don't know if you are aware, just a fact or a figure in the beginning of my presentation. The Erasmus mobility to and from Coimbra Group universities, it actually accounts for 16% of all Erasmus students in Europe. So just to say that the Coimbra Group and its members, it's a very strong advocate for internationalization in higher education. So congratulations to that. So let me start with the COVID-19 pandemic. This has exposed millions of learners, teachers and researchers to new challenges, new ways of learning, teaching, examination, communication, and doing research. I must say we must all applaud the sector's incredible resilience and the adaptability and solution-oriented approach to make sure that the teaching and the learning could continue in the pandemic times. And we could see there was a lot of joining forces also, both on the education and research and innovation sides, to help tackle the crisis. Everything, of course, from the cutting-edge research on vaccines and treatments of the COVID-19 virus, but also demonstrating a lot of societal engagement through dedicated actions of students and staff. Now the crisis has, of course, put to the visible light a lot of strengths, and that's great, but also a lot of weaknesses of our education systems. And it's clear that the impact of COVID-19 on higher education has been enormous, and that we can speak of all institutions and all students have been affected. So, of course, together with trying to find a way out of the crisis, we must continue this path that we have already started before the pandemic set out, in terms of a strong and important transformation, the so-called twin transformation of green and digital. And it's true that we can be for sure that how we handle now this crisis, it will have a long-lasting impact on the whole economy and the society, how they will develop in the future. And in this context, I think we will all agree that deeper cooperation is absolutely key. Deeper cooperation between universities, it will be instrumental for a transformative recovery. So let me now turn to what we can offer at the European level. Please keep the previous slide. what can we offer at European level to accelerate this transformation? And I would like to highlight two essential points here. First of all, keep up the direction and the ambition. And second point, investment. So first, while we address the new challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, we should not forget our other priorities, important priorities. First of all, we need to remain committed to empower our students with solid scientific insights. And we need to combine this striving for excellence in learning outcomes with a very strong emphasis on social inclusion. And this is a clear ambition of the European Pillar of Social Rights. Everyone has the right to quality and inclusive education and lifelong learning in order to enable them to participate fully in society and manage successfully transitions in the labor market. And higher education has a key role to play in this high ambition. At the same time, higher education will be indispensable in steering our continent in the direction of a greener, more sustainable future. And of course, better integrate the smart and responsible use of digital technology into our life. And I'm happy to share with you, and many of you are already aware, but we have under this context, 4 relevant Commission initiatives that are planned in the pipeline for this year. First of all, a communication setting out the path for the European education area. We have a communication plan on the European research area. We're looking forward also to a new digital education action plan, of course, very pertinent in this digital learning, online distance learning context, and a new skills agenda for Europe. And this leads me to the second point. We need investment. And there's no doubt that we are facing difficult times ahead. We all agree on that. But it is also important that we don't forget any part. So if we are saying it's important to invest in research, we also need to be clear that it's important to invest in education. This is key for our recovery and beyond. So the proposed total budget of the future Erasmus program of almost 28 billion euros. It was announced recently by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and it fully reflects this high ambition, this priority. The recovery plan and the new MFF proposal, it focuses on mitigating the devastating effects of the pandemic on European people and economies. And we should be aware that universities can benefit from a variety of EU instruments. So in addition to Erasmus and Horizon Europe, there will be new opportunities under the Next Generation EU, the EU's recovery instrument. For example, cohesion support will be strengthened, and we know there will be more capacity for Invest EU facility. So just to say that higher education institutions have a broad many of support opportunities. And I hope that they will use these opportunities to the fullest. Because we need this investment into higher education to equip people with competencies to be resilient and lead the strong recovery. We need our young graduates to thrive in society and find jobs that match their expectations. But we also need that all adults should be able to upskill and reskill, because unfortunately, far too many people have lost their jobs during the pandemic. And we need strong institutions, which can be drivers of all the top ambitions and priorities. So this clearly presents an opportunity. As you also said, Ludovic, the crisis can be turned into an opportunity. And it highlights a duty for universities to rise to the challenge. And this is where the European universities come in. Central to this concept is the idea that pooling resources and working together is essential, absolutely necessary actually, for quality and inclusion, for excellence and innovation, for recovery and resilience. Actually, it's still the previous slide. Sorry about that. And we have already learned a lot about joining forces in this initiative. perhaps even more during COVID-19. So let me also take this opportunity to thank all those Coimbra members that are part of these alliances. You have shown many good examples during the crisis, and I don't dare mention any examples, but it made me think. I saw another tweet this morning from Una Europa's Excellent Student Hackathon. But there are many of these examples that have really helped during this crisis period. And a recent survey that we did of the 114 higher education institutions involved in the European Universities Initiative, it actually showed that more than 60% of these institutions consider that being part of a European university has been helpful in addressing the current crisis. This is especially true for those that are most advanced in the implementation. And almost all institutions answered that they would have been better prepared to face the pandemic if the European Universities Initiative was fully operational, fully implemented. And the survey also shows that 60% have started pooling together online courses or MOOCs that are accessible to students from all their member universities. So this is impressive. This is in less than a year, and it's very promising. Now, next slide, please. So, what is the next steps for the selected European universities? We now expect that European universities will start or accelerate again or continue focusing their efforts on implementing their ambitious long-term vision, involving all their partners, their partner universities, their students, their academic and administrative staff, their associated partners, and so on, in a strong transformational process. And we expect that alliances will help us in identifying where there may be existing obstacles at both national and EU level, so we can also facilitate and smooth this transnational operation of the European universities. And I want to inform you of some upcoming steps to continue our co-creative efforts of this initiative, as we have done since the start. We will organize a joint webinar between all the European universities and the member state representatives. Actually, it's later this week. And the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the experience so far, and if we can already identify some possible solutions to unleash the full potential of the alliances. You may be aware that there's a second call for proposal that was launched in November last year. And in 1 month's time, we will announce the results. We expect to have another 24 additional European universities, bringing the total number to 41. So to support specifically the Alliance's research and innovation dimension, and this is something we have discussed at several occasions, and it's been a request or a wish for many of the universities and the alliances. So a specific top-up call was launched recently under Horizon 2020 to specifically target the research and innovation dimension of European universities. So I hope the alliances will use this new funding opportunity. And generally, we encourage universities to use all available EU instruments to implement this transformative long-term strategy. We also encourage the co-financing by member states. Today, we have as many as 12 member states that have concretely gone forward in this co-financing. And we hope that this will be an inspiration for others and that other member states will join in this effort. Now, these 41 European universities that we will have will be announced, the remaining of them in July. But this total amount, let's say, of alliances will, of course, be monitored. We will follow them and exchange between each other. But at the end, it will also be evaluated by independent experts. And those that are on the right track will be able to reapply for further funding under the next Erasmus program. And I should also say, under the next multi-annual financial framework, We will further develop the synergies between the education and research and innovation dimensions. And by doing so, it's good to see that we will help building a true European education area, which is closely connected with the European research area. And this will enhance the free circulation not only for students, but also for researchers and for scientific knowledge. Next slide, please. So building on the testbed of the Erasmus Plus European universities, we are going to continue co-developing a shared vision on the universities of the future. And this we want to do together with you, the wide higher education and research community, with students and member states. And we will be following up on this with broad consultations and dedicated co-creation meetings. And the ambition is that all higher education institutions in Europe can be part of the transformation, but at their own pace. Because we see we need a broad modernization aimed at the entire higher education community, with its more than 5,000 institutions, to work step by step and together towards this common endeavor. Next slide, please. So what we will be focusing on. First of all, promoting inclusion. Next slide, please. So first of all, promoting inclusion so that no one is left behind. It's absolutely essential that a wider range of students from very different profile can access higher education. And for its recovery and future development, Europe needs to invest in people and all its people. And secondly, linked to that is lifelong learning, because knowledge is in constant development and we need to keep on learning. But we also see that full degree programs may not always be the best suited for such continuing learning activities. And this is why we are working on promoting short learning courses leading to micro-credentials. And I'm happy to share with you that just 2 weeks ago, we had the first meeting of our expert group with the participation of Commissioner Gabriel, our first virtual meeting, I should say. Third, we need to remove red tape for the delivery of joint degrees where students attend several universities. This will hopefully lead to a European degree automatically recognized within the EU. And we know that this would be beneficial for especially the European universities, but probably also beyond. And fourth, we need a modernized European quality assurance system. COVID-19 has highlighted the need for more transnational cooperation in quality assurance. And just think of how education went online in an unprecedented scale and very much beyond borders. So this is a necessity. And for this, we would like to review the existing Council and European Parliament recommendation of 2006. It needs to be updated, a bit modernized, and we would like this recommendation to call for establishing of a European recognition and quality assurance system. And finally, we would like to explore the feasibility of a European statute for European universities and other university alliances to be able to flourish and overcome obstacles stemming from, we know, disparities sometimes between national laws and practices of different member states. So these policy developments, we hope that they will help to accelerate the transformation towards the universities of the future, not only for the European universities, but for all higher education institutions in Europe. So thank you again for inviting us to be here. And we all agree these are challenging times, but I'm really glad to see that they have not prevented you from continuing to support the European Universities Initiative and continuing our work together. And we know cooperation is absolutely key to accelerate the transformation of higher education into the force we need to shape the future. And just to say, education, research, and innovation are a European common good, which needs to serve and reach out to society. And you are a key player at the intersection of these fields. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sofia, for this really comprehensive presentation of what's hot on the table, and there are many things as we could expect, of course. Just to mention that while you were talking, we were joined by now more than 360 people. So this is really interesting, and I would like to remind to the audience that they can actually ask questions through the chat room, and some of these questions will be raised during the question and answers. And actually, we are about now to start discussing a little bit. With you, Sofia, while the questions are arriving, I have already a few ones. Of course, maybe the most urgent one is related to the impact of the COVID-19, as you rightly exposed at the very beginning. Indeed, this has been immediately taken very seriously by the European Commission, and we were actually really glad to see this solidarity taking off rapidly. And I would like actually specifically ask a question about the so-called recovery package. And because you mentioned indeed that this recovery package will be in a way at the disposal of universities, not only of course, but in the present context to universities to support them trying to remedy to the post-coronavirus damages. And we know, for instance, that the next framework program for research, FP9 Horizon Europe, will have actually a top-up coming from this recovery package of about 14 billions. Is there actually a similar approach to the Erasmus program, or it will only be through a diversity of instruments that education will be supported through this recovery package? You can, of course, imagine that we would like to see that education is also directly supported through the recovery package. Yes. So that's my first question.
Thank you very much for a very important, pertinent, and current question. No, I think the whole the recovery plan, you can see it has two legs. You have the recovery, the next generation EU with the different instruments, and then you have a revised MFF proposal. And in this, as you mentioned, the Horizon top-up, this is not exactly the case for Erasmus, but it doesn't mean that there are not many other opportunities more for higher education and for linked to, let's say, Erasmus. And I would mention some of them. I mean, we should really look into the details of all the different proposals, because I should say the next generation EU is a very ambitious recovery plan. You know, it's a mix of grants and loans. And under this next generation EU instrument, you will find a number of reinforced instruments, both on the grants and the loan side. I could mention, I would like to mention perhaps what comes to my mind here, it's the strengthened cohesion support, where you will see that there's a lot of potential for supporting infrastructure. And there I mean also infrastructure, not building only, but I'm talking about digital infrastructure to really improve the resilience of our education systems. So this is a very important first point. I would also like to mention Invest EU, where in itself it will be many more possibilities for loans, and that can in a way also be infrastructure and so on. But you may also be aware of a recent launch of the so-called education and skills window of Invest EU. This has a lot of potential, and we hope that this will trigger new ideas. It is in a way a continuation of the previous Invest EU and the student loan, and you can imagine that by adding many more opportunities, so broaden the menu of what can be supported under Invest EU. Then we have other like facilities of React EU and so on. So it is in a way a full list of what may be possible for education. This is clearly part of this first leg of recovery instrument. But then we should also look on the broader menu of under the revised MFF, in addition to, let's say, what a continued strong Erasmus and Horizon Europe can offer. We know that we should also look at in other programs like Digital Europe. There, I think this program is extremely relevant in these times, and we know that there are a lot of possibilities there for improved connection. So in addition to the infrastructure, I think if one looks the potential opportunities for universities, the menu is fantastic. It is really an important menu and a broader menu. So you can actually find the support, everything from infrastructure, connectivity, learning content, and of course the pedagogy and support, as we know it also in the Erasmus and Horizon program.
So we hope actually that this menu will not be too complicated, so we can find our ways in the menu, because
Yes.
you know, of course, the idea is not to make this more complex than it is already. So let's hope that indeed this will be clear to all stakeholders, so that we can indeed just go to the point, which is to remedy to the current crisis. Of course, yeah. I should mention that we have a lot of questions coming, of course, and we don't have so much time. So let me just briefly launch a few of them. There are very practical questions regarding the results of the second call. You mentioned that this should be early July. I just continue very quickly, and then you can please respond in short. Also, some audience asking about if there will be already a new call under the next the next Erasmus program, or will we see actually already a call at the end of this year, 2020? So clearly people asking for clarifications here. Also synergy between the different programs with respect to the alliances. This has started with specific call in the Horizon 2020. Will this continue? Will this be developed? And there are so many other questions. Unfortunately, we will probably come back to this on different occasions, hopefully.
Yes, no, and I'm happy to continue conversations, of course, after this session and reply to other questions and engage in discussions with pleasure. For the next, let's say the next call, let's say we discussed with actually in the co-creative effort we did to look at the next steps under the future MFF for European universities. It was a clear feedback from both member states, from the alliances themselves, and from the more broader stakeholder community, that there was not a particular wish now to launch immediately a third call. It was rather the feedback that let's now focus on these two pilot calls. We will have more than 40 alliances. Let's draw the important lessons, or let's assess how far they have come, and we can draw some lessons. And only after we feel comfortable what these lessons are, we should launch a new call. So that was the feedback we have received, which would mean that we would not have a call until to be published autumn 2021. Just to say that it is just, I'm referring to feedback from discussions, so we are of course still open to consider this. But this was a quite strong view. As we are in a pilot phase, we should also focus our efforts in drawing lessons from this pilot. For synergies, clearly this is what we wanted to encourage already now with the Horizon 2020 top-up, and we hope we will encourage many of the alliances to take part in this. It will be the same opportunity for the first 17 and the remaining 24. This is something we are also hoping to continue in the future MFF, and we know that we have worked very closely together with colleagues between DG EAC and DG RTD to make sure that the modalities are correct in our legal bases, and we hope the co-legislators are also fine with this. So all the opportunities of synergies and complementarities are definitely there. So now we want to test with this top-up and build on that to intensify synergies as from the next MFF.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sofia, for this responses. Clear as usual. Of course, we would need probably a few hours to continue and exhaust, if we can exhaust the topic. So, but we have to move on for the program. So thank you very much for being with us, Sofia. And
Thank you.
we of course look forward to our continued discussion on this topic and many others. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So now actually it is time to move on to the first session that will actually be about ensuring sustainability of the European Universities Initiative at, in particular, the European level, and in particular after 2023. 2023 being actually more or less the time when the first alliances will finish their first cycle of 3 years. And I'm very delighted to welcome the first speaker in the session, and as well as the second speaker. So the first speaker will be Professor Peter Mathiessen, who's the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Edinburgh and representing Una Europa. And we can also see the second speaker, Professor Patrick Prendergast, the President and Provost of Trinity College Dublin, also representing the Alliance Charm EU. I should mention that the Coimbra Group is an associated partner to these two alliances. And we will first start with the first speaker. So Peter, it is up to you. And the title of your presentation is The Post-Corona Crisis, a Momentum for Constructing the Una Europa Virtual Campus on the Sides of Education, Research and Societal Engagement. So Peter, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. I was just waiting for somebody to unmute me. I hope everybody can hear me. Ludovic,
Yes,
thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and it's a great pleasure for me to represent Una Europa in this meeting. As you know and as you've heard, the concept of European universities was a pre-coronavirus phenomenon. We're going to date everything, I think, that we talk about to before and after coronavirus, but the notion of European Alliance, University Alliances came last year, and when the University of Edinburgh was considering this call, we were very keen to be members of an alliance. We had opportunities to join several alliances, and in the end, we joined Una Europa, partly because of the relationships that we already had with some of the member universities, and partly because we thought that the agenda that was being discussed by Una Europa was particularly imaginative. All of that was pre-corona, but all of it is still very much true post-corona. And as Sofia said earlier on, I think there's a sense in which the momentum behind these alliances has actually been accelerated by coronavirus, and so we may be able to see this as something of a silver lining. So could I have the next slide, please? The new brand for, sorry, just go back to the previous one, that one. The new brand for Una Europa was actually launched only on Monday, so you're seeing it very early. This is the logo of Una Europa, and the list at the bottom of the slide is the member universities, and you'll notice that a significant proportion of them are Coimbra Group members. So the next slide, please, shows this membership in more detail. So there are 8 universities in 8 different countries, and the universities speak 9 different languages. The reason that there are 9 languages is because the University of Helsinki is a bilingual university. And so there are 9 languages spoken by these 8 universities, and you can see we're dispersed right across Europe. Now, I have to use the Brexit word. I apologize for that, but part of the thinking of the University of Edinburgh in wishing to join one of these alliances was that at the time we were contemplating the UK's decision to leave the EU, and we were conscious that we wanted to maintain the strength of our relationships with a number of these European partners, and indeed our international outlook more generally. And so there were many reasons for joining one of these alliances, but Brexit mitigation was certainly one of them. So you can see the membership there. And the next slide, please. So the mission and the objectives of Una Europa are outlined here, and the list will be familiar to those members of the Coimbra Group that are part of this alliance, and indeed the Coimbra Group itself is an associate member of the alliance. But we're working together to create a university of the future, which we see as a continent-wide university for all of our activities in teaching, research, and innovation. We envisage bringing graduates for the future with really extraordinary European international experience through the collaborations that we've set up, and using the latest pedagogy and tools which will be used to support learning in the future. So if I can have the next slide, please. Thank you. So the next slide just refers really to the acceleration by coronavirus that I've already referred to, and I'll have the next slide as well, please. And I wanted to talk about one particular example of the collaboration that's going on through Una Europa, and this is around research, and particularly the topic of One Health. Now, what we mean by One Health is the linkages between human health and animal health, and obviously illnesses like COVID-19 are examples of what's called zoonoses. So they're illnesses which start in animals and transfer to humans, and they are previously unknown to humans, and so therefore they have a devastating effect on human health. And the linkage between animal health and human health is something that we in Edinburgh have always been very conscious of. We have one of the top vet schools in Europe, and we have a lot of work in collaboration between the vet school and the medical school dealing with human beings, and also with social science and economics and various other aspects of public policy. So the concept of thinking about health as one phenomenon that's not separated into animals and humans is something that we're quite familiar with, and it's become very topical for the world now as it thinks about COVID-19 and the possibility of other zoonoses. So we believe that bringing this subject to the activities of Una Europa will be a way of joining up multiple skills, multiple disciplines across a group of research-intensive universities, and we think that this will enable us to address not just the pandemic and similar pandemics, but other big research questions which require multidisciplinary and multinational approaches. We don't believe that research can be, sorry, if you just go back to the previous slide for me, we don't believe that research can be unidimensional. It needs to be multidisciplinary and crossing national boundaries. And then the next slide, the same is true, of course, for education. We believe that there are tremendous advantages to our students for the collaboration with universities speaking other languages and existing in other countries. This has been complicated by coronavirus because we were originally thinking about mobility between our campuses, with the idea being that a student might study a common degree program, but they may study it in a different language, and they may study it in 2 or 3 of the 8 universities rather than in just 1 or in all 8, but some subset of the universities. This has become practically more difficult with the limitations on travel that have come with coronavirus, and we hope that those are temporary. But what it's allowed us to do is to think about how can we provide international experience and international mobility to our students in an era when physical travel is going to be more difficult, more dangerous, and more restricted by public health guidelines. And so we are imagining ways in which our universities can share classes, can share experiences outside the classroom, and can give our students a taste of another language discipline without actually physically being able to travel there. The ultimate extension of this will be to have joint teaching units and joint assessments, and working towards the notion of a common European degree that you heard Sofia mention earlier on. Next slide, please. Sofia kindly mentioned the hackathon that Una Europa has recently run. This was called Una 10, and the slide that's showing here is a picture from the Edinburgh students' contribution to this, in which they were working on trying to devise a safe, socially distanced way of experiencing a visit to a museum. And this was done together with the the Talbot Rice Museum in Edinburgh, which is an art museum attached to the University of Talbot Rice Gallery. Student teams from 7 of the 8 Una Europa universities work together in this hackathon, and the team from Edinburgh is now working with the mayor of the city of Helsinki, who showed some interest in applying some of the thoughts that they'd had about this gallery visit in safe circumstances to some of the solutions in Finland in response to the need to change practices after coronavirus. So UNA 10 featured more than 100 students, more than 20 coaches, 19 teams addressing 4 challenges, including involvement of the European Commission Joint Research Centre and a number of local stakeholders. And there are lots of student videos on YouTube that you can see if you want to find out more about some of the challenges they were addressing and some of the theories and solutions that they came up with. The next slide, please. In the longer term, these are the ways we're thinking. So we're thinking about joint bachelor degrees where partners will build a very similar curricula, obviously delivered in different languages. I mentioned at the beginning that there are 9 languages spoken in these 8 universities. And in the early stages of our thinking, again, pre-coronavirus, but accelerated now, we had 2 focus areas that we were thinking about, a bachelor's in European studies and a bachelor's in sustainability. And the plans for these programs and the removal of red tape, which Sofia mentioned earlier on, are well advanced. And this has been a particularly imaginative part of the discussions that Una Europa has been having. We also think there is scope for micro-credentials at master's level so that students can study for a part of a master's degree with transferable micro-credentials. And again, the pilot subject in which we see that working is going to be in sustainability. And ultimately, a joint doctorate. We're thinking in terms of cultural heritage, where here a joint doctoral title, which would be recognized in all the partner countries, would be the desired outcome. And so we're thinking of all levels of education and research in terms of collaborative activity leading to collaborative degrees. This really is just the beginning. These are just the seeds of some ideas. We're very much turning our mind to future sustainability. How can we think about making sure that these initiatives outlive the current funding? I was very pleased to hear that Sofia mentioned thinking about sustainable funding for these networks in the new MFF. That's very welcome. We're also thinking that collaborative research applications and teaching applications will be very attractive to funding agencies, and we hope to find a number of ways of making these initiatives sustainable. With that, Ludovic, I'll stop, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Peter, for this presentation from Una Europa. I suggest that we immediately move to the second speaker, and then you will come back with us with for the part on question and answers, if you agree. So then it is my pleasure to give you the floor, Patrick, from TCD and representing CharmEU. And the title of your presentation is The Future of European Universities Initiative at European Level After 2023, the Differing Perspectives on Sustainability. Patrick, please.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I hope everyone is well. I'm, as Ludwig has said, President and Provost of Trinity College Dublin, and I hold a number of other positions that might be relevant. I've been on the governing board of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology since 2012. I'm also President of the engineering program Unitech, and I am chair of the board of Science Gallery International, which brings 8 universities worldwide, including several in Europe, together for science engagement activities. I want to talk about the viability and sustainability of the European Universities Alliances, and with particular reference to the alliance that my university is in, CharmEU. European Universities Alliances has the potential to be as pioneering as Erasmus and the framework programs in terms of spearheading pan-European higher education, research and innovation. We want to get students, professors, innovators moving around the regions of Europe in work and research and study in as frictionless a way as they do around the United States, for instance. And it won't happen automatically. It needs visionary and enabling initiatives, and I believe the European Universities Alliance is such an initiative. Like the University of Edinburgh, and as Peter has said, I was also very keen for Trinity College Dublin to be involved in this, so I was delighted last summer when Charm EU was chosen as one of the 17 inaugural European Universities Alliances. As you can see, and can you please go back because I want to, you've gone on ahead of me in the slides. Now go forward, go back. The logo there describes what Charm EU is. It stands for Challenge-Driven, Accessible, Research-Based, Mobile European University. And the next slide, the alliances of 5 universities, Trinity College Dublin, and the universities of Barcelona, Montpellier, Utrecht, Edforster and ELTE in Budapest. And we have Ruhr-West University of Applied Sciences as an associate partner, as well as several other companies and agencies and networks, including the Coimbra Group, and as given there on that slide. Now, challenge-driven is the concept that we're familiar with. You can go back, you don't need to go on. I'll tell you when to go ahead. Challenge-driven is a concept that we're familiar with for research, but I think we're less familiar with it for education. And the aim in challenge-driven education is to put students in the driving seat of their own learning, to solve challenges rather than to learn about disciplines. Next slide there. The broad area of challenge represented by Charm EU is to reconcile humanity with the planet. That's large scale and interdisciplinary, as befits challenge-driven education and research. Think of COVID-19, the current pandemic we're in. Addressing that pandemic is a medical challenge, obviously, but it's also, as we've seen, a political challenge. It's an economic challenge, financial, mental health, societal behavior are all involved in solving that challenge. And in the 21st century, we have to ask, can we educate students to be challenge-centered? How might they address the challenges of reconciling humanity with the planet? Our expectation is that they will look at options across the participating universities in Charm EU and select for themselves the relevant programs and modules. In Trinity College Dublin, they might choose a module in our new Engineering, Environment and Emerging Technologies Institute. For Utrecht, they might take a module in Marine Science. From Barcelona, a program in Sociology, and so on. The idea is for students to create bespoke curricula for themselves. Their goal is not to know everything about one discipline, but to learn to use many disciplines to solve issues confronting humanity and the planet. Charm EU is innovative on a number of levels. Firstly, we're setting questions around education and skills. Can challenge-driven education work? Can students and professors move beyond the disciplinary approach? Are professors willing to deliver this kind of education, and are employers ready to take on the graduates? Secondly, we're setting questions around partnership and around collaboration. Can European universities work together as a single institution? And can that be enabled by new modes of governance? Can we cross barriers of different cultures? And different cultures spawn different kinds of regulations. So we have to cross those barriers too, to successfully deliver an innovative and relevant curriculum. All 17 European University Alliances are addressing issues of partnership and collaboration. And for the alliances to be sustained, the answers to these questions must be yes. We must be able to solve questions relating to governance and collaboration. There are early days as yet. At this pilot stage of the project, we're looking to establish viability and sustainability. Charm EU has organized around 9 work packages led by the University of Barcelona, and they're shown here on this slide. It's a next slide, a complicated slide that I won't go through, but I want you to see it here. The core activities of these work packages are, first, the creation of an innovative governance and management model, and second, of a curriculum which addresses the ambition of reconciling humanity with the planet, and a curriculum that incorporates transdisciplinarity and challenge-based learning with student mobility and inclusivity. The key outputs we're looking for are also given there: a sound working governance and management model, a toolkit that will share resources and artifacts of the project among current and future European Universities Alliances, and materials and content for a master's degree that will run from 2021, involving all Charm EU partners in a single university arrangement. We will complete the work packages in 3 years' time, 2023. They will help us determine the viability and sustainability of Charm EU and of the European University Alliances. We, the participating universities, we believe in the relevance and importance of challenge-driven education and in collaborating to deliver our mission to reconcile humanity with the planet through education and research. We're staking our belief on that this approach is the way forward for 21st century education. The onus is on us to create a high-level, well-organized initiative, but we need to do so in tandem with students and employers. And you can put up the next slide, please, which is given here. We're trying to do something new. We're trying to give students greater autonomy in building their curricula, and we're asking employers to try out this new approach. We will best succeed if we involve all partners from the start and remain student-centered and employer-centered. Focusing on the relevance and attractiveness, we will also secure our financial viability. I recognize higher education as both a public good and a private good. So my preference is for students to pay for the Charm EU Masters, underpinned by national and or EU support. Our experience in Trinity is that students will pay for a program if it's sufficiently attractive, and that if it's attractive, students will see it as an investment. We have some programs like this. A standout program is our Bachelor's in Arts with Columbia University in New York. Participating students pay the high US fees for a 2-year program. And the demand for this among EU students cannot keep up with supply. Students will pay for quality. Can we place a high value on Charm EU? I think we can, and I think doing so will force us to face issues of financial sustainability. However, I understand people's concerns around tuition fees, and I applaud strong state investment in higher education. So whether it's the participating countries and the EU that bears the costs, or the students themselves, the remit remains the same. Financial sustainability derives from the programme having first and foremost quality and relevance. States and students should only invest in excellence. If we can build something students and employers want to invest in, this will help build momentum and impetus around the creation of a European education area. Let me close with some thoughts on the European education area. To date, this has been more an aspiration than an active policy. We've made significant advances in the European education area through Horizon 2020 and the ERC. But when it comes to enrolling students, designing curricula and conferring degrees, there haven't been much significant pan-European advances since Erasmus. It will take political will for this, and we need national governments to be flexible and creative. European Universities Alliances do provide a structured framework, incentivized and supported by the European Commission, for universities to demonstrate that we can successfully innovate. And I finish with a quote from an Irishman that the whole world thinks is French, and that is Samuel Beckett. And Samuel Beckett was a student here in Trinity College. He was one of our first exchange students, and maybe not the best example, because he went on an exchange to Paris and he didn't come back. He stayed there. Maybe it's good for European literature and world literature that he did. But Samuel Beckett said, and I quote, "Let us do something while we have the chance. It is not every day that we are needed." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for this brilliant presentation. I would like to invite Peter Mattison to join us again so that we can discuss a little bit and reflect further on the two presentations so far on the two alliances, UNAROPA and CHARMEU. Maybe I would like to recall that the audience has the possibility to ask questions through the chat of the webinar system. But maybe while we wait for those questions, let me start by asking, and if you could respond in short, of course, for the matter of time, what would you see as the immediate impact of the COVID-19 on your alliance, both positive and negative? And for instance, can you also elaborate on how the students responded in this challenge? Maybe asking first to Peter, then Patrick.
Thank you very much, Ludovic. I mean, as I mentioned in some of my slides, I mean, I think clearly there are many very negative aspects of coronavirus and its impact on our ability to provide the best possible education for our students and the best possible environment for research. But I would like to concentrate on the positives. I think some of the imaginative thoughts that we'd already had about creating shared programs and making the alliance greater than the sum of its parts, I think have actually been accelerated by coronavirus. It has meant that we can't do what we were originally planning to do, which was a lot of it was based around mobility. But in some ways, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that actually by doing some of these things digitally, we make them even more versatile, we make them accessible to more people. Clearly, it brings challenges of its own. We've been trying to address this thing that we call digital poverty, where some students don't have access to either the devices or maybe the broadband or Wi-Fi signal, and there are ways in which we can address that. Maybe trying to make very conscious efforts that this doesn't leave anybody out. But subject to that, I think actually this can be seen as a positive. I think what it's made me feel, I mean, I'm certainly very happy that the University of Edinburgh had the opportunity to join one of these alliances, made the decision to do so, and then was successful in the application, because I think it's put us in a very strong position. And I know that a number of other UK universities are now wondering why they didn't participate. In the first round, there were only 3 UK universities that were part of successful applications, and I'm very happy that Edinburgh is one of them. So I think actually I'm trying to see this as a silver lining of the pandemic, that it's accelerated us in our ability to get support and backing to do some of the things that we were planning to do anyway, and hopefully it will be even quicker and even more successful as a result of the pandemic.
Thank you, Peter. Patrick, your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with everything Peter has said, and I won't repeat any of his points other than that I agree with him. For us, I suppose the idea behind our CHARMEU is challenge-based, and it reaffirmed our view that challenge-based education is something for the future, where we work across disciplines and allow students to decide challenges like others could be, other than the pandemic, inequality, climate change, issues regarding to environment and so on. The second thing, perhaps in a separate point, is the Europeanness of where we are kind of has come to the fore in the pandemic. The fact that there is so much mobility in Europe and how important it is to us all, and not just for tourism, but for education as well. We've had quite some discussions here about how our university would continue with Erasmus, and some universities in Ireland have said they won't allow their students to go on Erasmus, but we've decided we will allow them to go on Erasmus. Such was their push to be allowed to continue to participate in exchange programs. So I just make those 2 points.
Okay, we are receiving a lot of questions from the audience. So I'm trying to sort of pack them all into a package. So very quickly, a few questions further to you. We have seen in the keynote speech from Sofia Eriksson that the European Commission is indeed planning some sort of long-term potential support to the alliances, hopefully. What, in your opinion, would be needed to accelerate the process and the progress of the alliances? And another viewpoint from you expected on what future statute should be given to the alliances to support their sustainability? I don't know who wants to start.
Paddy, why don't you go first?
Please.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's becoming clear, I think, that across Europe the funding modes are so diverse that some ground level funding will be required to maintain financial sustainability in the long run. As I said in my few words there, of course, it's no point in providing financial sustainability for something the students don't want. So the first and most important thing to guarantee sustainability is that these are valuable and seen to be valuable by both students and employers. But that being said, to make it possible for many families and individuals to participate, there will need to be funding of some kind provided from the public purse, in addition to what might or might not be available privately. Then it would be very interesting actually to look at governance modalities around Europe and whether or not there would be some common ground that the 17 inaugural European Universities Alliances share some common problems that can have a regulatory common solution at European level.
Yeah. I mean, all I would add, I mean, I agree with that. I would just add that I think the challenge to us is to make our applications irresistible. I think we have the opportunity to pool massive strengths from across organizations, and this should put us in a very strong position to compete. We don't have any divine right to funding. We can't expect special treatment. We have to focus on excellence and make sure that we're really, really strong. I agree with Paddy that there needs to be some infrastructure funding. And one thing I didn't say in my presentation, but we've tended to think in terms of using relatively small amounts of money to pump prime activities, because sometimes with a small amount of funding, you can get something going and get it to a point where it's then ready for a broader funding application. And I think the more we can do that, the more we will achieve sustainability of our networks. But I think the bottom line is we know that we have individual capability as institutions. We have to prove that these linkages make us even stronger and even better able to address the problems that the funding agencies want us to address.
Mm-hmm. Do you already see in your alliances a sort of internal already preference for your researchers and teachers to work within the alliance, or do you still have cooperation with other previous partners? And similar to this, do you also already see the need to cooperate between alliances?
Well, shall I go first here? I mean, I don't know how it is at Trinity College Dublin, but I can't tell my researchers what to do. I can give them opportunities, but these things only succeed if people want to work with other partners. And one of the reasons behind our choice of joining Una Europa was that we already had a number of successful bilateral relationships with some of those partners, and so there was already activity that we could build upon. I do think that universities university leaders can't, as I say, they can't force people to work together, but they can provide opportunities. They can create openings, and then I think it's a question of encouraging our colleagues to get together and talk about where there's areas of shared interest. We must not be exclusive, so this certainly doesn't stop us from collaborating with anybody else, and it certainly doesn't mean that we would have any special favors for another member of Una Europa, but only in the sense that we already had links with them and we want to see those continue, and there are areas of complementarity that we think really make very good sense. Your point about collaborating with other European university alliances, I think this is really important. I think if this initiative is going to succeed, then they can't just be one alliance that just goes off on its own way. There's got to be some kind of common goals. And from what I've read of the other alliances, and indeed listening to Paddy just now, there's a lot in common between some of the shared ambitions and everything. So it makes absolute sense for us to work together and not in any kind of not allow any kind of barriers.
Mm-hmm. And Coimbra Group is here to help, of course. Patrick, your views?
Yeah, well, I think Peter has hit the nail exactly on the head. This is not designed to replace CharmEU, not to replace, but to build on and have a particularly strong alliance with some universities, but to continue with our multiple collaborations on many other fronts, including outside of Europe. And I agree with the point. You can't tell. You don't want to have professors who are easily told what to do. You want the professors who when persuaded that something is the right thing to do, will put their shoulder behind it. And that's what we see with CharmEU.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter and Patrick. Unfortunately, we could continue discussion, of course, but we have to move on with the other speakers. So thank you again for joining us, and we will have other opportunities, of course, to continue to discuss on this very interesting topic. So now it is actually time to move on to the second part of the first session. So we are still discussing about the sustainability aspect of the initiative, and it is now my pleasure to first call in this second part Professor Vincent Blondel, who is director from Université Catholique de Louvain and representing Circle EU Alliance. We will have also in this panel Professor Lenka Rovna from University of Charles in Prague and representing 4EU+. And we will also have Professor Antonella Forlino from Pavia, Vice Rector for Internationalization, representing the Alliance EC2U. But it is first to Vincent Blondel to present his presentation on Circle EU with the title European Universities, Challenges for Creating Sustainable Cross-Border Collaboration in the European Landscape.
Thank you for the opportunity for sharing some of my thoughts and some of the thoughts of the Circle EU. So I'm director of UC Louvain, University of Louvain, and we part of Circle EU, and it's on that behalf that I'd like to share some of the thoughts of our University Alliance. Perhaps next. So next, yes. So Circle EU has 7 universities listed here. It's not yet a University Alliance. I hope it will be a European university, since we are in for the second round of applications. And it's an alliance between the universities that are listed here: Aarhus in Denmark, Belgrade, Humboldt in Berlin, King's College in London, University of Louvain, University of Oslo in Norway, and Université de Paris, which is the merge of the Université Diderot and Descartes. Next, please. Yes, so you see them here again, 7 universities, about a little more than 300,000 students, and just one vision. And the vision statement is next. The vision statement is here. Next, please. And it, of course, makes all sense to ask whether it's still relevant, since this was a statement that was written and also agreed upon by all the Circle EU members before the crisis. So let's look at some of the things that have happened since then. For many of us, and this has taken us, for many of those on this webinar, most of our time since February or March. And personally, it has been 24 hours, 7 days a week. We've moved since then, we've suspended presence teaching. Next, we have interrupted lab research. It's now coming back. We've imposed teleworking in university administration. This is not my university office. I've left my university office 3 months ago, and I haven't returned since then, as probably many of you. Social life on campus is now almost non-existent, and it slowly comes back, but it has huge impact, not only on students, but on all the other aspects of the social life on campus. Closed schools results in problems for students and staff. Exchange of Erasmus international students have been significantly affected, not only this year, but probably also for the future years. There are financial and personal problems for students that we try to care for, and including financially supporting students, not only for accommodation, but also for life and health. Large written exams are made impossible, at least on site, on the buildings of the university. As I'm talking, about 10,000 students from the university are taking their exam online. International travel, visitors, conference suspended. All this has had a huge impact next. And we have had to take decisions that were sometimes politically influenced. Of course, what the university does says also something about the society as a whole. So there has been a close collaboration between the political sphere, and all this has, of course, immediate effects, financial effects, but also potentially long-term financial impact on, particularly on publicly funded universities. So next, so what's left after all this, what I've described, what's left of a vision statement like this? And I'd like to argue, of course, that it nevertheless is still very valid. One of our mission is written this way: mobilize knowledge for impact. So next, what has the COVID-19 crisis brought or has given as information regarding that aspect? So it's certainly the crisis, to my view, has confirmed very strongly the university's essential role in society. Every day I get reports on how university professors and researchers intervene in the media. And probably for these last weeks or so, these last months, this has been multiplied by 3 or 4. So helping the public understand what the crisis is about, helping policy making, offering solutions to protect everyone's health, including in the university hospitals, and university as role model. What university does, what university do also has impact in schools and has impact on university as a whole. In particular, in the context next of Circle U, we wanted to concentrate to mobilize our knowledge for impact on issues of global health, and it's particularly appropriate in this case, climate and democracy. So clearly, the objectives there were plainly in a right context. Next slide. Then we want also in our vision to have research-intensive and interdisciplinary university that also partner with civil society, business, and the public sector. What has the crisis brought to our attention is that tackling global societal challenges requires clearly, of course, crossing disciplinary boundaries, but that's already very much into the direction that European institutions wants to move the university. So it's really research intensive, interdisciplinary, but also that needs strong links with academic and non-academic stakeholders, not only for creating innovative solutions, but co-constructing policies. Clearly, a crisis like this needs not only university to be present, but also them to interact with and help to co-construct policy. So next, on the Circle U projects, we have precisely that in mind. It was written before I said the crisis of creating new platforms to achieve this all-in-one with all these actors present, and not only university present, but also those in charge of co-constructing policies. So it's a second aspect of our vision. The third one is a European university, of course. Next, what the crisis has shown us the importance, of course, of bringing Europe closer together, in particular in the management of a crisis like this, to contribute to build a broader European identity and to keep strong relations with non-EU partners as well. So, of course, a crisis, a virus, no borders, but the same is true for air pollution, for example, or water, or on many issues. A very strong collaboration, including between universities, is extremely important. So next, at the Circle U Alliance, University Alliance, we want to develop models that respect specificities and also builds on our diverse relationships within the EU. So some of the members of Circle U are founding members of the European Union, but then we have also Denmark, the UK, Norway, including Serbia. So it shows the diversity, and when we interact with our students, what they very much care about too is to keep some of these differences and not to have something that is completely homogeneous, but nevertheless that brings Europe together, in particular in contexts such as the crisis that we have now at European scale. Next slide, please. A fourth aspect is to have an inclusive European university. So next, the COVID crisis has shown, of course, for many of the universities how distance learning can be source of opportunities, but they're also a very strong disruption. So they need reliability of the IT infrastructure. There is a loss of the human interaction between teacher and students, loss, of course, of the extra academic student activities that are extremely important for students to feel like being part of a cohort, and keeping, in particular, the students, the first-year students, and to keep alive their connections and their motivation for their studies. And it has also outlined, of course, the reduced international mobility, but also the IT gap for teachers and students. When a student takes an online lesson with 2 or 3 screens in a quiet room, it's not quite the same as with a good internet connection. We can easily imagine also students of a completely different type, and these are also there. And so the inclusiveness needs to be a source of close attention. In Circle U, next slide, please. In Circle U, we want to reinvent mobility and develop joint mobility policy that foster not only inclusive, but also environmentally and inclusive mobility, as well as quality standards for virtual learning. So these aspects need to be taken care of for true mobility for all our students. So next slide. So with this, I close my presentation here, just with the argument that what the crisis has shown is how much these university alliances certainly are one of the right tools to respond to crises like this, not only this one, but probably also the ones that are to come. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for this very insightful overview of the COVID-19 impact. I think it is indeed very interesting to see how alliances can bring part of the solution. I suggest that you stay with us and you will join us again for the discussion a bit later on. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Antonella Forlino from Pavia, representing the EC2U Alliance, and the title of your presentation, Antonella, is For a Sustainable EC2U Alliance, the Role of a Central Interconnectivity Platform, the EC2U Connect Center. Antonella, please. We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now. Yes, okay. Please.
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon to everybody. It is a great pleasure to present at this open section of European University Alliances. I have just been appointed as Vice Rector for Internationalization at the University of Pavia. So I am the last one that joined actually the creation of the European Campus of City University Alliance, EC2U, that I'm going to present, but I was just nominated on time to be involved in the submission of this project that is actually under evaluation. So it's not still a financial alliance, but we really hope it will be. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the next 10 minutes, our strategy to make this alliance actually implementable and sustainable. So EC2U include 7 different universities spread over Europe from north to south, from east to west. The coordinator is the University of Poitiers, and together with Poitiers, also the University of Coimbra, of Iași, Jena, Pavia, Salamanca, and Turku are members of the alliance. EC2U include 30 associated partners, and among them we have municipalities, we have a technological park, student association, and also national accreditation bodies. And Coimbra Group is also supporting the alliance. A total number of over 160 students and 20,000 of staff are involved in the alliance that will reach over 1 million existing citizens. Next. So the 7 universities that actually participate to the alliance already in the last 10 years share a peer-reviewed journal paper in different areas of science like humanities, physics and engineering, energy and environmental science, earth and biology. And these strongly support the commitment to join their effort in the success of this alliance in a specific field that they are very interested on. And if I can have the next slide, I will explain briefly how the alliance will be actually structured. We foresee the formation or the creation of 3 virtual institutes that will be focusing on education, research, innovation, service to society, within 3 of the UN SDG, namely the good health and well-being, the quality education, and the sustainable cities and communities. And these 3 virtual institutes will actually implement, we'll start with implementing 3 joint master degree that will be multilingual, international, and intercultural. And all the partners in this alliance will definitely contribute for the success of the alliance themselves. And actually, talk about the virtual institute, it really fits very well with the crisis that all of us is living right now. We really need to improve the possibility for students to have virtual exchange together with a personal exchange. So the structure of the C2 really fit very well on the situation, pandemic situation that we are living in now. If I can have the next slide, please. So now it's come to sustainability. Well, in order to really make sustainable the first 3 joint ECTU master programs and the mobility that will not be only physical, but we also foresee virtual and blended, and this fits very well with the pandemic situation. And the sustainability of the 3 virtual institutes really requires something innovative in terms of sharing resources. And indeed, we foresee a completely new and innovative way to share student, staff data and resource. And we name this a new way to share data EC2U Connect Center. If I can have the next slide. When it comes to share data, the more easy thing that we can think about is actually to do that manually. Meaning when you have to share data from one university to the other, what you can do is basically extract and reinsert data on a case-by-case basis. But this, although is quite common, is very time-consuming, and definitely, as you all well know, I'm sure, it is really error-prone, and the risk of misalignment are quite high. So a solution could be to do an automated data exchange on a bilateral basis. But also this is quite challenging because it incurs in a quadratic increase in terms of cost for setup and for maintenance. And especially because each bilateral network will require a specific content, specific schema, specific format, specific protocols. And already for an alliance with 7 partners like EC2U, we will foresee 42 exchange channels. Too many, and the implementability of this assay will be costly, and extend this kind of process to other alliances will not be really appealing. So if I can have the next slide, a possibility to solve this problem will be to create a centralized database storing personal data. And this will be quite easy to manage, but then we will face a problem of privacy, and also in terms of political and technical constraints, it will not be an easy solution for sharing data resources. So what we actually foresee in EC2U, if I can have the next slide, please, is what we call the EC2U Connect Center. So it's a complicated slide. Try to make as easy as possible the explanation. So what we foresee with the EC2U Connect Center? Well, the EC2U Connect Center will basically define shared data models, interchange platform, and interchange protocol on top of open data interchange solution standardized by the World Wide Web Consortium within the resource description framework. So we will not create anything new. We will use stuff that is already in place. We'll adapt that to our alliance. And the Connect Center will actually not be responsible for data storing outside the master system, but it will allow processing data, responses, requests throughout a local adapter. And this will be a dynamic way to exchange data between the partners. Will make really easy to implement the number of the university, and it will be, in our view, a very nice way to extend this sharing mode to other alliances. If I can have the next slide, the other beauty of the EC2 Connect Center is that it will actually allow to create the EC2U card that will be based on the European Student Card Initiative, and it will be extended not only to students, but also to staff. And it will allow the connection between existing university card systems, so we will not bypass them, we will integrate them. It will allow the immediate recognition for the identity, and this will allow an easy access to all the EC2U services. And it will contain also EC2U open badges. And if I can have the next slide, just to give an overview of what we foresee the Connect Center will be able to transform the EC2U Alliance by 2030. Well, we definitely hope to be able to deliver joint and personalized European diploma, and with our accept of sharing data, we believe it will be possible. We will extend the virtual institute concept not only to the 3 UN SDG that we foresee now, but also to other ones. We will be able to integrate the inter-university campus life with society, because the Connect Center will also be implemented with Acknowledge Hub that will be open to third party. And finally, we foresee the creation of a yearly sustainable rendezvous between academia and citizen. And this will happen in the occasion of the EC2U Forum. If I can have the next slide. EC2U Forum will be central in the organization of our alliance, and it will be an unprecedented system that allows not only the governance of the university, but also the 7 cities and also the local, regional, and international stakeholder. Will be a place where all these people will meet, will discuss, will build solution, and will be actually able to create an inclusive, democratic, and more fair society. And this will definitely be possible thanks to the new way of sharing data that we actually envisage in our alliance. So if I can get the next slide, that will be my final slide. I will leave you with our website. I hope you will navigate on it, and I will give you also the contact of the alliance. I will be happy to answer any question, to share our experience, and to get experience from the other alliances. I thank you, of course, for the attention, and if you have any question, of course, I'm open to take any.
Thank you very much, Antonella. Perfect timing, and I should say that I appreciate the fact that you also gave other views on the sustainability, in particular the operational aspect. But we will come back to this when we will further discuss a bit later on. Now it is my pleasure to invite Lenka Rovna, Vice Rector for European Affairs at Charles University in Prague, representing 4EU+. And the title of your speech, Lenka, if you can join us, is Synergy Between Research and Education, the story of 4EU+. We are waiting for you. Lenka, you need to, yes.
Thank you, Ludovic.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, I am very happy for the opportunity to introduce to you the European University Alliance for EU+. Besides demonstrating the synergy of research and education, I would also like to introduce to you comparison between European integration process and the formation of European University Alliances. This is close to my academic background of a Jean Monnet Chair in European Integration Studies. Next one, please. The Alliance for EU+ was formed at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and it is composed of 6 partners: Sorbonne University, Heidelberg, University of Milan, Charles University, University of Warsaw, and University of Copenhagen. We are large, comprehensive, research-intensive institutions with similar characteristics. The alliance was structured along long-lasting cooperation. The number of joint publications, research teams, and even study programs was impressive. but mostly between, composed by 2 or 3 partners. Next one, please. Next, yes, thank you. What are the first lessons learned? First, the mission statement and our plans, our visions, go beyond the pilot phase of the European University. Like in European integration, there is no finality, there is a process of deepening and widening of our cooperation. Second, this is the value of trust and openness. Our mutual cooperation is a continuous process of a goodwill to find the best solution inclusive for all. Finding sort of Brussels compromise, we would say. Third, research and education are inseparable. They are enriching each other. Our universities have them in their genes. And fourth, this is necessity of mutual interaction, what I call Europeanization of EU+. And there are 2 processes, if I may ask for the next slide, please. And this is the process going in the circle, so top down and bottom up. As to top down, that the top initiates, assists, and encourages the teams, but the teams come up with ideas, initiatives, and activities. And the process which goes in circles and there is interaction of both levels, that is then resulting in deepening of cooperation and creating community at both levels. Next one, please. What are the challenges? So the first one is that there are different models of governance. I mean top-down, because it's necessary to embed the 4EU+ governance into the structure of our universities, that there are more actors at more levels. We have universities with their faculties, centers, staff, students, and their institutions. And then 4EU+ governance is penetrating, in fact, all levels. Then also we have to accommodate changes in the university governing bodies. On June 17th, there will be elections at Warsaw University, next year Sorbonne, and the year after at Charles University, and new rectors and new teams will be coming. Second, this is initiation of faculties. It means the bottom-up process, and this is a constant process of work with the teams. I think we have to share a lot of enthusiasm with them to persuade them that this is better to do things together and that they can benefit. Third, it is also communication, because there is a constant communication, either horizontal level among partners at different levels, because these are not only rectors, vice rectors, but these are our staff, academics, students who are cooperating, but also vertical levels. I can also, if in the debate you would be interested, elaborate on the communication means provided. Next one, please. I have promised the story of the flagships. So when 4EU+ started at the beginning of 2008 on already existing or initiated cooperation of many interdisciplinary teams, we at that time registered more than 100. And we clustered them into 4 flagships according to their topics. And member universities of 4EU+ financed numerous meetings and first activities. To give you some examples, for instance, doctoral school in mathematics in Prague in fall 2018, or seminar for EU Plus against cancer in Paris in spring 2019. We very much welcome also the new activities, the top-up from DG Research, which is going to balance the research and education. If I may ask for the next one. So that in the fall 2019, that the Erasmus Plus call stressed educational aspect and boosted synergies between research and education, and flagship and research teams with their educational dimension are the cornerstones of 4EU Plus. They are embedded in 4EU Plus governing architecture and decision-making process. For instance, they are including in grant selection process. Regarding the flagships, you can have a look. As I said, we have 4 flagships. The flagship number 1 is coordinated by Charles University jointly with Milano and Heidelberg. And to give you some examples of the themes I have mentioned already, for EU Plus against cancer, or it is aging in urban society, and many other themes. The flagship number 2, which is coordinated by Warsaw University, is mainly focused on social sciences and humanities, but also data collection. And to give an example, there is a research and teaching network, Plurality of Memories, preparing the first MA European Memory Studies. The third flagship, which is chaired and coordinated by Heidelberg University, is concentrating on mathematics and data, communication, computation. To give an example of a theme, this is the mathematics of high performance computing. Flagship number 4 is coordinated by Sorbonne University. And to give an example of one of the themes, this is environmental change detection and assessment, training in physical geography with field trips to Alps and Greenland. So if we can go to next slide, please. The problems of sustainability were tackled by my predecessors. What I said, there are key internal enablers. I referred to seed funding, which came from our home universities, which devoted substantial amount of money. On the top of that, for instance, Charles University gave twice 200,000 euros to mini grants. Now Warsaw is launching a new research and program with pedagogical outputs as well. The question is what to do after COVID, because the budgets are decreasing. We spoke already about external enablers, and it's European funds and national co-financing. Not everyone is as lucky as, for instance, Czech universities or French. It's not the case in Denmark. If we can look at the other one, the next slide, please. So I see that the time is running. So my predecessors also spoke about the impact of COVID. So on one hand, our activities were speeded up and they all took place online. So we didn't miss anything. We missed each other, of course. And what is nice is the willingness to combine physical and online activities and to learn from each other, that we were worried that some colleagues would not be so open to digitalization. But of course, some processes were slowed down, like finalization of the governance or communication with associated partners. I would like to sum up. So the conclusions, I would like to quote the mission statement that together we aim to create a truly integrated European university system by 2025. First, for me, for EU Plus represents a model of differentiated integration with deepening of integration on both levels within for EU Plus, on the level of governance, but also on the level of academics, students and staff, and creating authentic community, I would say European demos. This is also strengthening of integration and Europeanization process in European higher education and research area, and also deepening of integration of European universities and creation of truly European communities have so-called Jean Monnet spillover effect to society. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lenka. So I would like now to call back Vincent and Antonella to join us for the question and answer session. Thank you for joining. Vincent as well, if Vincent is still with us.
Yes. Technology is not always that easy, right?
Yeah. Actually, talking that's a very good transition, Vincent. Thank you, because talking about technology, we receive questions on the chat box, and one of them is actually that we all saw, including in your presentation, that indeed universities had the capacity to respond very quickly to the challenges of the COVID-19 crisis, including by switching almost entirely to the online mode. But do you agree with the following statement that physical mobility and physical exchange will never be replaced completely by virtual exchanges? Maybe Vincent, you can start.
Yes, of course, but I would say the same for the students that are in their own home country, right? So the student these are also the testimony we get from our students, is that they're missing so much the presence on campus and being part of a cohort and participating into something all together. And so it's completely essential, not only for these students. Of course, we can do marvelous things with online teaching, but it will never be the same as being on site. And so the same is true, of course, for international students and for mobility and for getting the experience of sending a student from Brussels to Warsaw or to Madrid and spending 6 months or a year there. If you want to make true Europeans, there is no other way than this one, right? So this is, and having them just taking the online course of Warsaw or Madrid, it's just completely different. So of course, mobility needs to be physical mobility. You need really to sense what's going on in the country and develop an attachment that stays then for a lifetime. And so, of course, virtual mobility will not replace true physical mobility.
Antonella, maybe a short viewpoint on this?
Absolutely, I agree with Vicent. Personal will be a necessary way to allow students to move from one university to the other, and so much that we can do in terms of virtual exchange to make really intercultural the exchange. Still, I think that personal as other feelings, the student will really live within the society of the different country, not only university, but also the city where they're going. And if I can also add something to that, I think for an educator as well, have the student from foreign country in person is different than to see them on a screen. At least I'm a person-to-person educator, so I really like to have the student in front of me. I do believe that it gets something more to both the student and the educator.
Absolutely. We have seen actually in your different presentations, also in the previous ones, that there are different aspects of the expected sustainability. We have seen that there is indeed concerns about the financial, about the political. For for instance, Antonella, you focused on the operational, but don't you think that there is also a philosophical aspect to the sustainability? And what I mean by that is the necessary link with the citizens and the local stakeholders. And maybe Lenka, you can react to this point.
If I may, and this is connected with your previous question, and this was about physical mobility, that the learning process is not only in the classroom, that it's going on around. So this means that if students or staff can become also members of larger community, society can get involved with society, so it's also important. And if I may, one brief comment. With my students, we started our teaching from 1 week to another. And after our classes, we agreed that we all learned a lot, but we were feeling exhausted. But when being in the classroom after the class, we always feel full of energy. So I think that this personal contact is also very important.
Thank you. Vincent, about the link with citizens?
Well, there are great expectations from the citizens, right, towards universities. And we have there a major role to play, and not only, of course, in education terms, but also in research. We see it very much that citizens want to be involved in defining what, and so this is certainly a challenge for European research and also for education. So indeed, this crisis has also shown how much universities are involved in society. As I was saying in my presentation, what we are discussing now with our political authorities of whether for the exam session in August, students will come on site or not. If we say so now, it signals something in society that goes well beyond universities. So what the university does is a role model also for society. So it's definitely extremely important, and also to keep this connection with citizens.
Antonella?
Yeah, I think that is fundamental to have a sharing between university and society. And again, it is necessary for both parties. The society needs to be aware of the relevance of the university, and the only way that they can do that is if we can actually make our message clear to them. So we need really to be within the society with our message, maybe simple, maybe find a way to get in touch with them. On the same way, we need also to feel what the society really needs and make this feeling our problem and try to solve them. So it's really, I believe, a mutual exchange. We really need to work for that in the university in general, but I think with the Alliance we have even higher chances because we can do that in a larger scale.
Lenka, and this will be the final word of this discussion point.
So I think Vincent spoke about the experiences during COVID, and this was experience of our students, our medical students who were in hospitals, who were testing, who were also babysitting those from the pedagogical faculty. So I think that interlink between students and society was very strong and very visible at all our universities.
Thank you very much to the three of you for being with us today. Again, this could last many hours for such a very interesting topic. So thanks again for joining, and again, good luck for.
Thank you, Ludovic. You're doing this very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So now it is time to move to the second session. of the webinar about another very important topic related to the alliances, namely the European degree, opportunities and challenges. And in this session, we will have two speakers. The first one will be Professor Dorothy Kelly, Vice Rector for Internationalization at the University of Granada and representing the Alliance Arcus. And the second speaker who will then join us is Ms. Gohar Ovanesyan. She is the Vice President of the European Student Union, ESU, and you will join us again a bit later, Gohar. And first, this is up to you, Dorothy, with your presentation entitled The European Degree as an Instrument to Further Inter-University Cooperation Within and Beyond Alliances. Please, Dorothy.
Thank you very much, Ludovic. It is a very great pleasure to be participating in this virtual event. It would, of course, have been a very great pleasure to be present in Montpellier with all of you and all our dear friends in the Coimbra group. But I would like to thank you and congratulate you on organizing this remote event, which I think is proving to be very, very successful. So thank you very much for that. It has been a very, very interesting session for me, as I have been able to see the very many commonalities amongst the alliances. And I think perhaps that also brings us back to a comment made earlier by the Provost of Trinity College Dublin, that and I think the Principal of Edinburgh also, that there is a need, of course, for all of us as alliances to work together towards our very common goals. Like the cases presented before, the Arcus partners, and I can speak very specially for Granada, but I believe I speak for all 7 partners, were very, very keen to be involved in the European Universities Initiative when it was launched, because belonging to the Coimbra Group has taught us the huge potential and the huge added value of multilateral cooperation, and indeed of alliance to alliance cooperation. So it was a logical step forward with trusted partners, many of whom, as you will see in a moment, are Coimbra Group members, but also from other networks, to move forward in the building of an alliance. And I say building, which brings me to the name of the alliance. The name of the alliance, Arcus, is derived from the Latin for arch. So the arch, bridges, foundations, and very much a central concept of building bridges to a shared future. I think it was perhaps appropriate here simply to comment a little on our mission, on our joint mission. The Arcus European University Alliance, through enhanced sustained cooperation, will work together as a laboratory for institutional learning in an innovative and open way. And I'm just going to read 2 of the objectives: to attain a substantially higher level of quality in education and research, and a deeper societal, cultural and civic engagement, together with educating engaged, critical European citizens to become competent decision makers. And I think this resonates a great deal with previous presentations, and the need, of course, for universities to step forward and take that very, very proactive role in the very, very complex situation, not only of COVID, but in general, we find ourselves in Europe today. If I can just describe very, very briefly the Alliance, as you can see, 7 universities, over 300,000 students, over 24,000 academics, over 17,000 administrative and technical staff, sharing a profile which will be very familiar to Coimbra Group members, because as 5 of us are currently members of the Coimbra Group, logically we share the Coimbra Group profile as long-standing comprehensive research universities with extensive experience in joint projects and a common profile as internationalized institutions with deep regional engagement in medium-sized cities. You can see that the geographical spread, and again, very intentionally, is pan-European from the far northeast to the far southwest, covering 7 different countries. The Alliance has organized its activities around 7 action lines, but in particular 6 thematic action lines, since the last on the slide is coordination, management and dissemination, and I'll come back perhaps to governance in a moment. The first of these is led by Bergen. Each of our action lines is led by a different partner university, although all the universities participate in all the action lines. The first is an action line around the concept of engaged European citizens, and is based on the development of challenge-based learning for our students and closely linked to the grand societal challenges, in particular this year, climate change. The second large action area in which we're working is student-centered frameworks for quality learning in many different senses. The first linked to mobility of all kinds, and I'll perhaps come back to that a little bit later on. The second to joint programs, which is directly linked to the issue that Gohar and I have been asked to speak about. And the third, staff development, so pedagogical innovation, new pedagogical methodologies. The third thematic area is multilingual and multicultural university, again, something that has come up in previous alliances. In our case, we have 6 mother tongues plus English as a lingua franca within the alliance, so seven languages used institutionally, although of course our institutions teach and work with many more languages. That is an area which is led by Leipzig, the previous area led by Vilnius. Padova leads an area working in widening access, inclusion and diversity, linking in with the social inclusion agenda, which Sofia mentioned at the beginning of our session. Lyon leads a work package, an action line linked to the entrepreneurial university and regional engagement. I insisted before on the importance of regional engagement for all of our universities. And Graz leads the action line on research support and early stage researcher development, linking in perhaps with what Linka has just said. We strongly believe in the indivisibility of education and research as universities. Granada is responsible for coordinating, managing, disseminating and quality assurance. Just a brief word there perhaps on the governance structure, which is a very participative model of governance structure with the matrix structure, I think similar to the one described by Linka. Also, I'd like to make particular mention here. In this session, we have a participant from the European Students' Union. I'd like to make particular mention of the fact that Arcus from the very outset understood the need for strong student participation, and so has a student council and has a student representation structure within the alliance. In our first work plan, we have 4 major cross-cutting goals. Again, these will resonate. Community building in a very cross-cutting way amongst the various different communities of academics, of students, of administrative staff. Across the university, including services and units of the university who are perhaps not so accustomed to international European level cooperation. The second major goal would be that of staff development across the board for the future of our universities, for a future where European cooperation is central to our activities. The third, sharing resources of all kinds, but also protocols and policies. And the fourth, of course, influencing policy at regional, national and European level. And these are all linked to the European degree, which I will come on to now. So the idea is basically to lay the foundations for creating an environment which will offer and nurture the opportunities for future cooperation. Coming to European degrees, the work plan which we have designed for the first 3 years, and again, like as Lenka has said, our work plan goes way beyond the first 3 years, which came under the first pilot call. We have a very wide range of activities which could be denominated, which could be called joint programs. In all kinds of formatted short courses, summer courses, winter courses, staff development, working at all 3 levels, all 3 European higher education cycles. and in all modalities. So physical joint activities with involving physical mobility, virtual, remote collaborative activities, and blended collaborative activities. And these, of course, which were already present in the work plan, have come very clearly to the forefront following the pandemic. As we have been working over the past few months on the development of these joint programs, we've been looking, as I said, at different kinds. We've been looking at short courses and how to certify those short courses, at micro credentials for different competences and so on. But in particular, to come to the European degree, one of our objectives is to set up 3 pilot joint master's programs, again in fields which are familiar, and I think this is very interesting to see these commonalities across the alliances. The 3 fields that we have chosen are cybersecurity, European studies, and translating and interpreting. But the aim of these pilot programs is not simply to set up the degrees in themselves, but rather to act as a pilot to allow us to develop protocols for extending the model then to other academic fields within the alliance. Of course, in order to do that, we have been identifying obstacles. And just a brief comment on obstacles. We have a tendency to think that the obstacles are all external, but I think one of the things that we often realize when we work together on projects of this kind is that sometimes the obstacles are of our own creation, and therefore identifying things which we can do to move forward without the need for external authorities to remove obstacles is one of the important elements. Very briefly, we would see the European degree as an instrument to further inter-university cooperation, not as an end in itself, but rather as an instrument to improve the quality of the educational offer, to enhance learning outcomes, to improve employability, and to strengthen the education of European and global citizens. The point was made before that, of course, these course offerings must be seen to be an added value for stakeholders. Otherwise, there is very little sense in moving forward. And can I very briefly, what is a European degree? We can understand European degrees in many, many different ways, and just quickly four possibilities. One is that a European degree is in comparison with a degree from another continent, with an American degree, with an Asian degree. And for that, we already have our European higher education area. We already have common standards and characteristics such as transparency, our quality assurance systems, and our student-centered approach. European can mean beyond the national, and I think this is probably what most of the alliances are looking at when they think of the European degree. So joint degrees accredited only once, hopefully, by a European accreditation system. But then there is also the understanding that perhaps a European degree should be something specific to European universities. And a lot of pressure exists for fast-track models only for the pilot alliances, which I think involves a certain risk. I think it involves a certain risk if we really want to work towards the sustained structural and systemic transformation which the Commission has asked us to do as pilot alliances. And I think maybe if I leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. We will surely come back to these very last points that you made about what should we think when, or what should be the European degree. We will surely come back to this during the question and answers. Tonight it is my pleasure to invite you, Goa, to be the next speaker now, providing let's say the student's view with your title, Why Do Students Need a European degree? That's indeed a very good question. Goa, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Ludovic, and thank you very much to all the colleagues at the Coimbra for this invitation and the chance to to come and speak to you all, which kind of seems like speaking to a mirror, but I hope everyone there is following it. So yeah, I don't have a European university to present to all of you, but I come on behalf of the European Students' Union, being the vice president of the organization. And European Students' Union is a pretty big student representative organization on the European level that represents around 46 national student unions from 40 different countries in the European continent. And we cover for about 20 million students from around Europe. And as you can imagine, working on the European universities development, following the topic, doing advocacy on behalf of the students is one of the key priorities for us. So I have a very few slides for you, and on this first slide you can see what are we advocating, what are we doing during our advocacy work for meaningful and democratic student engagement in the European universities. So far we are actively involved in the stakeholders group on the European universities that is set by the European Commission. We are one of the partners of the EUNIC project that works on developing a quality assurance framework for the European universities. And on the action level, we have so far issued 3 different resolutions that are following the development of the European universities and giving the perspective of the European students on what do we think about it. We have organized the first meeting for the students from the European universities back in November, when there was the general meeting organized by the European Commission for all 17 European universities. And we have an informal platform that we communicate regularly with the students from European universities. And as Sofia mentioned, in a few days there will be another meeting for the European universities, and here again we have a big meeting organized there for students. Very recently, actually in March, we organized a webinar about student engagement in European universities, which was a quite interesting event, and I will share a little bit conclusions kind of from this webinar with you too. And of course, during all this work, we build cooperation with the alliances themselves. So we try to be active in engaging with them, in promoting good practices of student engagement and supporting them to come up with models or systems for student engagement. So if you will be happy to cooperate on this, we are more than happy to welcome you, an email from you or a contact. So if we go on the next slide, we will see very brief takeaways from this webinar that we did, and we discussed the student engagement in the European universities. So here we hosted our colleagues from Director General for Education and Culture from the European Commission. We hosted colleagues and student representatives from the UFE Alliance, and also a student representative from Una Europa Alliance. And we had a very interesting discussion to understand if we have a working model for student engagement in European universities or we don't. So a brief takeaways, as you can see on the screen, is that in some instances we see that student engagement works by the initiative of institutions. So there are a few institutions who initiated and engage their students from the very beginning, from the phase of defining the application for European university funding and then implementing the project itself. Then in other instances, we see that the initiative comes more from the side of the students when they learn that their university or a network of universities is applying for this project. And unfortunately, also we sometimes see that student engagement is not being initiated at all. And the purpose of our advocacy work is to make sure that this is in place and students have a chance and the opportunity and the right to be and engaged with the European universities developments. And so if you would click, you will see my next message on the same slide, that we see that the value of student engagement is not very commonly understood by the leadership or by the decision makers. However, we are very sure that students can be so much important when it comes to meeting different challenges, especially meeting in an innovative way many different challenges that our universities have to face. And students can do this both as being part of decision-making bodies as well as being part of the whole program and the content of the work of the European universities. And when we go to the next slide, we will see that actually the European degree itself is a challenge for the European universities. And what was being mentioned by Dorothy, especially in the reflection of about the European degree, I think I share quite many of the points that she mentioned, because looking at the perspective of students will help us to understand what should actually a European degree do, and is this something that applies only to the context of the European University Alliances, or is this something that we need to look in a broader scope? So coming from the perspective of the European Students' Union, we see that a European degree, which actually came as an idea throughout the Bologna process and the European higher education area, the European degree should be a compatible and comparable degree, which works in the framework of the European qualifications framework, that is quite well known. We see that the European degree should support transition and access to various fields and other levels of education. We also see that the European degree should be automatically recognized, and whether this degree is earned from a European University Alliance or another university that just functions in the European education area, this point should be in place. And we see that a European degree should not be a catalyst for harmonization. So we shouldn't use it to harmonize the variety of the degrees and the variety of the programs that the universities could have. And a main message that actually targets specifically the definition of the degree in the scope of European universities comes with one of our resolutions. So if you click next, you will see this message. And this is our most recent resolution on the topic of European universities that was published back in December by our board members. So here we say that students within the Alliance should be able to rely on the fact that they can obtain a degree from any of the universities under the same rules and conditions, and this means tuition fee, housing possibilities, support system, etc., that the same application and admission procedures will apply, and that there will be no differences in recognition of the diploma given by the universities within the alliances. So this is how we see a degree being given by a European university. However, if this is the European degree, if we want to label this as a European degree and limit the definition of a European degree towards only the European university alliances, I think we would be not very much in agreement with this, because there are still many other universities in Europe, and many other students are studying at other universities where they earn a European degree, which is recognized, supposedly recognized among the European countries. So it is good to always bear this in mind when we are trying to look into what a European degree should be and how joint degrees should work in the scope of the European University Alliances. And I think with this, I will stop and be happy to reflect on further questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of points to discuss further rather than just give a presentation.
Thank you very much, Goa. And indeed, you have already touched upon a very important aspect of what should or what would be the European degree. Actually, I would like to maybe, I don't know if Sofia Eriksson is still with us, because that could be actually interesting to that, Sofia, if you are willing to join us again for this last round of question and answer, because in a way we have closed the loop, because you mentioned a lot of different aspects related
I will join,
to the
Ludovic. I'll see if I can get the camera going. Wait.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Sofia, for your flexibility. We had not explicitly scheduled to have you back, but I think actually it would be really relevant to have you back indeed. At least we could hear you. So yes, we have actually seen through Dorothy's presentation and Goa intervention that there could be in principle different ways to see the development of a European degree. Thank you, Sofia, for being with us. So could you actually, and I should say that these were also among the many questions that we had received from the audience after your presentation, Sofia. What is expected from the Commission's point regarding the development of this European degree? How do you foresee? How do you see it as a new tool, as a new qualification? Yeah, can you maybe also tell us what you expect on your side?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm already online. Good.
Yes, you are.
Well, thanks a lot. I would like to both to Gohar and Dorothy, very interesting reflections around the European degree. Somehow, each time this topic comes up, it somehow triggers a lot of reflections, interesting discussions, and this is the right timing to have it, because nothing is put on the table yet. We are really in the experimentation phase, if I can call it like that. Perhaps I should refer back to December 2017, where heads of state actually, in their European Council conclusions, they referred, when they put forward and they endorsed the idea of European universities, they also referred to a European degree. So in a way, we have a strong political mandate coming from the top level of EU heads of state. So of course, now what we are doing, we are experimenting, understanding what is the need on the table, let's say, from the experience of the European University Alliances. And I would say this is a typical topic to be, but actually it is not to be, it is being co-created. I think you can expect, we are planning to put forward, we hope the planning will still fit. We would like to put forward a council recommendation next year, which puts some ideas on the table of the next steps of the European universities and the lessons learned. And in this context, we also would like to spell out ideas on a European degree. So we are really in the collection phase of what it may look like or what it should not look like, because sometimes there are quite diverging views on this, and we are aware of that. And there's some skepticism. If you ask some member states, they don't like this idea at all. But if you ask others, they are extremely enthusiastic. So I think the challenge now is to find a good balance. And if we are serious with the ambition of the European University Alliances, and I think we have full support also from member states, and we see that this is one of the obstacles. We have to find a solution. And this is, I think, what I would bring into the debate today, because I don't have, of course, exact how the modalities would be. Would it be an add-on? Would it be a merge? Or I mean, we can imagine different scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Before giving the floor to Dorothy and Goa, could I actually ask a very quick technical question? Because if I'm not wrong, this year and in particular in June, we were supposed to have a ministerial conference in Rome to actually conclude the Italian management of the Bologna follow-up group, right? So, well, of course, this was not possible. So do you have any information about how this will be finally organized, maybe postponed by 1 year? Do you have any information on that?
Is the question for me?
To you, Sofia. Sorry.
Yes. I'm not handling at all. This is a purely intergovernmental process. I mean, the Bologna process, we are one member among many others, including the European Students' Union. To my understanding, there might be, I mean, it was postponed, as we all know, from June, and now we are looking into possibility for November or not. But as far as I know, nothing has been decided.
Okay, I was mentioning because that can be one important event in actually the development of the future degree. Yeah. So maybe now, Gohar, you could reflect immediately on Sofia's comments and then Dorothy, and then we will have to close because we have already gone over the initial time. Gohar, please.
Thank you. Thank you. That's indeed really, really great to know that we are still, like, in a way, brainstorming to understand what the European degree could turn into in the context of the European universities, and we are only happy to be part of this, because, you know, especially now when we are also seeing development of short cycle education, of implementing micro-credentials, integrating them into the higher education. All these are also degrees, right? If we provide a short cycle degree, that's also a degree. So is this going to be a European degree or no? Yeah, I think in general, I think this is a very important discussion, especially very important for the to ensure the rights of students to have a degree that is properly recognized and understood what it represents itself. So thank you very much, Sofia, for the welcoming of different ideas, and I will look forward to further work on this.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Yes, just perhaps briefly I think Gohar has just made a very interesting point there, and that is recognized and understood. And we know that when we look at some of the surveys on graduate employment, and we look at some of the issues arising around existing joint degrees, very often we find that the job market doesn't understand the joint degree as well as it understands national degrees. So these are issues which will also have to come into the debate and be taken into account. But I think, yes, again, as an alliance and I think as a university, we are very, very happy to hear that this will be, again, a co-creative process. I think that is very, very important, that all the stakeholders should be present. And I do understand that it's going to be a very, very interesting balancing act, because, of course, the competence for higher education lies at national level. So clearly we need the member states to be heavily involved in the decision making. And I would plea very much for a flexible model, for a model which is not exclusive, which includes all the levels and a variety of approaches, and perhaps which would also be inclusive, and perhaps no, definitely would be inclusive for all institutions. I think we need to look very carefully at the systemic impact also of this move forward.
Indeed. Maybe, Sofia, you want to have the concluding remarks in this Q&A session, and then we will close.
You're kind, super spontaneous. I think it's just for me to thank you, Coimbra Group, and all the participants in the panels, and I understand all the numerous participants, if they're still there.
Yeah, there are still more than 200.
It's fantastic. I think it was a very efficient, productive session you managed to do. I must say I was pleased somehow. It ends in a very optimistic manner, because we know the COVID-19 has been really tough and hard, but I was struck by the previous sessions where we heard that actually it was a bit of a silver lining, that the crisis has accelerated some of the reforms and changes we were on our way of doing. So I think that's a nice ending, that we should take this crisis and the challenges we are having into turning them as much as we can into something positive and as an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Sofia, also for taking this on the go. Let me maybe just then close by just giving a few Coimbra Group takeaway messages, and that will be in direct line with what you just said, Sofia. I think that indeed the presentations of today have shown that the alliances of European universities have already demonstrated the capacity to be a true game changer in the field of European and international knowledge. But we have seen that indeed there are still some questions regarding the sustainability, the long term in particular, long-term sustainability. And we believe at Coimbra Group that the alliances will not be sustainable only on the basis on call for proposals within Erasmus program, with top-ups from Horizon 2020 and later Horizon Europe. Of course, we know that the alliances will surely develop different types of synergies, partnership with other public and private stakeholders, of course. It is actually in their mission statements, most of them, but the Coimbra Group really calls for a long-term funds support from the European Union and also the member states, as well as adequate policy and regulatory developments. And the example of the European degree that we discussed just a few minutes ago is a typical example. So thank you to all the speakers and the participants in the audience. There are more than still 200 people who are connected. Thank you all for keeping with us, for staying with us until this late hour in the afternoon.